Sword Art Online is ass.
9 cred arc, such a piece of shit.
Sword Art Online is definitely the most disappointing anime ever made.
It's dog, it's a piece of trash, and it's actually a big disappointment and letdown.
You may not remember this, but at one point, Sword Art was king. Certainly there were people who didn't like the show, but you could actually say, I like Sword Art without someone thinking you're a fat dumbass with a lazy eye. Somewhere along the way, the internet began to notice gaping holes in the story.
A likable character in a dungeon and made Kirito's sister wanna f*** him.
There's Mother's Basement, who began farming views on Sword Art for years, and Giga, of course, got a slice of that pie. Can't blame them. Okay, stop eating. Stop eating. And numerous other creators have all shook their hands and looked at each other in the eyes and said, we're all gonna act like this is the worst piece of shit ever! Who's with me? Oh yeah, that's it, bro!
Hell yeah, it's the worst piece of shit.
The funny part is, none of these guys are wrong. The story is stupid. If you take off the nerve gear, a fucking microwave will blow your brain up. This guy is so evil, he starts licking Azuna's tears.
Yummy.
If you generally see nothing wrong here, one of your eyes has clearly drifted off into uncharted territory. Call SAO out, absolutely, but where the fuck was that energy in 2012? Look up Sword Art bad, and you'll find something most curious. Videos from 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years on Reddit. We're all on the same page now, but back in the day, Sword Art, I remember, was rapture. The click of a button would zip me over to another planet. It was the most immersive, most fast, most coolest stuff out all the time. There was no one to tell me it was dog shit, and if there were, their voices would be stifled as a grin would shoot across my face from one ear to the next, while I watched in pure astonishment. I can only assume one reason why I can't find any mainstream criticism of the show right after it came out. Many others had fallen under the spell that was Sword Art, and then years later was like, wait, what? Beater?
He's a beta tester and a cheater. He's a beater. A beater. Yeah, that's good. I like it.
What? That name is dumb as fuck. It's not possible. But I want to remember why I loved it so much. The impact the show had. The possibilities it opened up, if only for this short time. Timing was a pretty big reason why I even watched the show. Anime moved way slower in 2012. Today, you can look at any season for the year and find at least 4 good shows. If you did back then, we would have Mahou Shoujo Mahuka Magic Kowa Zombie Dasuka for the whole winter. That's why you kids are so spoiled now. There were banger seasons, but the truth is, new anime comes out faster than back in the day, so all of our little eyes were glued to each seasonal release. Fairy Tail was decent. Maybe this one will be cool. Everything was a landmine that would either be a dud or completely blow your socks off. Each season showed me something new. I was a new human, and of all the shows, no one did anything similar to Sword Art. But we're not ready for that, and I have something crazy to say first. Gaming was way funner back in 2012. I could go on and pretend like I know about harmonic adaptation, but basically, anything that makes you happy will make you less happy over time, like gaming or anime, both of which I enjoyed leagues more 9 years ago. The last 10 minutes of every school day would be characterized by intense eye contact, with the clock jumping out of my skin, waiting to hear the bell so I could run home and press the power button and hear this. Some of you might have heard this. Don't forget to grab your fanboy maid outfit on the way in. Gaming was home. At the time, Machinima was brutally ass fucking YouTubers. With their permission, Tobuscus was at the top. PewDiePie hit his first million. Smosh Games, Game Grumps. I honestly believe gaming was at its peak here, not just for me, but for millions of kids out there. Synchronizing with the universe, initialized racism, misogyny, homophobia, trace amounts of urine detected. You have reached the criteria to play video games online. Welcome to Sword Art Online. What this first episode did was, the extravagant architecture, the different biomes, the sound effects. There's PK guilds, iconic UI, perishable items, special event, monsters. There's only one anime that really makes me feel like I'm in an RPG. Not the one with the stinky ass skeleton, not the one with the shield. It's Sword Art. Those sound effects. are important. The ring bounces around my head years later like this is something that a real game has. The landscape shots that could have not happened. Breathe life into an authentic universe. This little forest area has a bridge thing. Giant pillars spill out from the sky with no explanation, yet the sky remains slightly distorted to remind you that this bustling environment is superficial. The stage was set to actually immerse you. You believed in this world where if you die in the game, your Dungeons buddy Sword Art Online breezed past its competition that season, then said, hold up, put in reverse. Saw. Chizu, get you! Looked at it and said, really? Don't let me catch you out here again. And hit the gas. It had the greatest premise, some of the best fights, highest stakes, all the way up until he beat the game. What a feeling of catharsis, man. And then Asuna is stuck in the game and Kirito has to go back and save her. And I'm thinking, everyone's putting the Oculus back on. And this is also part of Sword Art Online where Kirito's sister falls madly in love with him.
I'm in love with my brother. And that's something I can't tell anyone about.
Now, I had never seen some Alabamian shit like this, so I was not very happy. Regardless, the Ankret arc managed to reclaim some of the glory it once had. Kirito is still the guy dominating inferior gamers in the craziest fights possible. No, it was not as good as the first arc, but I still liked it all the way up until the point where he beats the game and saves Asuna. And then the government is like, Kirito, maybe you could hop into Oculus again? And at this point, I was like, what the fuck? That simply made no fucking sense. But before that, like, wow. To some extent, I always inserted myself into anime I was watching. Like, I genuinely thought that I would have fairy tale magic one day. Sword Art provided a perfect vessel that scratched a deep itch into my personality. If I were trapped in the world, I would be built differently. I would level up super fast. I certainly got it overpowered in RPGs. Before, it doesn't matter that Kirito was undoubtedly a shithead, because when we watched, his presence was irrelevant. Us pissy little kids were in Aincrad. These blobs of polish spread around the world to make it shine. That meant everything to someone like me, who lived vicariously through these characters on screen. I wanted to have 2 fucking swords and run around in these games I love. The show came out when our standards were a little different. Weeks before the Oculus Rift was announced, with a concept that was so goddamn ahead of its time, it was impossible not to crush it. Not without quality. It's not a coincidence that we really didn't start seeing RPG inspired isekai until post Sword Art. New Type magazine rated Kirito as the #1 most popular male character of the decade, alongside Asuna at #2 for females. The light novel was voted #1 of the decade by people who probably can't read. I believe that the metric rise of Sword Art Studios probably saw the potential in adapting anime with similar themes, worlds packed with RPG elements where you could level up and be special. A ton of novels existed that fit that criteria for years, but it's not until slightly after Sword Art that we see stuff like Log Horizon getting adapted and making it buzz. Okay, it's not just anime studios. The founder of Oculus Rift stated that he wanted to take after Sword Art and is currently involved in a project to create a game with serious consequences. The creators of Genshin Impact plan on making the largest virtual game in history with models inspired by Sword Art Online. The franchise spread roots in various facets of pop culture. The show connected with something that a lot of people had been waiting for something that caught on like wildfire, all on accident. Renki Kawahara was a normal guy that liked drawing manga. He also grew up with 2 sisters, so what the fuck was that about? He spent his time in college either drawing in the manga studies club or playing with games in World of Warcraft. However, he would slowly realize that drawing manga was way too much work, and to my knowledge spent the next 3 years pooping around. In 2001, Kanahara decided while having exactly 0 experience that he would apply for the Dengeki Novel Prize and wrote the entire Ankret arc, the first half of Sword Art, on a whim, and didn't even end up submitting it because he exceeded the word count by 112 pages. His attachment to the story would not let him throw it away, so he would post it online thanks to fan support. He felt motivated to keep writing, and 7 years later he submitted his new work Accelerworld, which actually got published as a novel, prompting his publisher to be like, hey, this Sword Art shit is pretty cool too, do you want me to print this out also? And Kanahara was like, yeah, let me just clean it up a little bit. Eventually the 2 were given an anime First Exceller World and then Sword Art. This monster of a franchise was shielded by a failed novel submission from 2001. No shit, there's flaws with the story. Kanahara was never written anything before. The reason why we resonate with the plot is because Kanahara is a gamer through and through, yet the reason why we hate on it now is because he was not a writer. As he's gained experience, he's collected so many regrets from the series, particularly making his female characters trophies to be saved and earned. He admits there's obviously plot holes with the nerve gear and just couldn't think of any other way to have players get trapped in the game. And I get it. If my first video was the one that everyone knew me by, I have some regrets too. You'll start. So let's start off with looking just at a few seasons from last year, from 2018. It was a strong lineup right off the bat with Winter 2018. But regardless of his lack of skill, the story comes from a real place. Kanahara generally wanted to imagine what he would do if he were trapped in a video game. It comes through in scenes where Asuna shows us how food is cooked under the game's engine. Kirito is a loner because Kanahara himself played solo and American players would get pissed off at him for the language barrier. And he's just doing his own thing. This guy was sharing pieces of himself. It's something that pierces through the bad writing, which is incredible because holy fuck, the writing's bad. Before I dug into his past, I could tell that this guy was a gamer. Someone who probably wanted to see all things he was writing about the world where he could put his gaming knowledge to practice and become someone who stood out even when he was playing by himself. There is a great list of things that Sword Art Online is not, but it was an outlet for us kids. I could peer into a distant fantasy at a time when I wanted it the most. Sure, people dunk on it, rightfully so. Just know that for now, I'm not joining in because I remember a time when Sword Art Online was the best anime ever.